Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know, our favorite day of the week, where we hope we are spreading joy and wisdom.
That's right. Yes. Thanks, Lisa. I love your joy and wisdom. Today we're going to explore the enchanting world of being unattached to
I
outcomes.
feel like a little like Tinkerbell or something should be flying around us. Like we always talk about waving a magic wand. I think to be unattached to an outcome, to some extent, if you've never done this, you almost have to wave a magic wand. I feel like this
Yes.
is a nice companion piece to last week around both and versus either or.
Yes. And I think it's an extension of expectations kill joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, tell me a little bit why you think I know why it's important for me, but tell me why it's important for you to be unattached to outcomes.
I have a lot to say about this, but for some reason this is coming to me at a live event that we were both working at. Our friend and fellow coach Kim X said this. Like, someone said, when do things not go the way you want in a coaching session? And she said, when
Mm,
I'm too attached to the outcome.
snaps to Kimek.
Right. So I
Yes.
I think about that all the time.
Oh,
Like, that can apply to so much. When things don't go well or the way you'd hoped, or when things start to feel harder, how attached are you to what you were thinking was the outcome, and how open are you to the things that might be even better for you or better for the situation, right? That's not maybe not always the case. I mean, there is like actual grief that comes with not outcomes, certain outcomes not being met.
yeah.
Um, and we talk here a lot about believing and having like a success mindset. And there's always the option, the possibility that things just don't go well. And that, like, how attached were you to it going well? And we're not saying you can't have feelings about it. I think maybe what we want to get into is flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first heard the phrase be unattached to the outcome, um, was when I first learned when I was first going through my coaching training. And in that instance, it was very specifically talking about getting a client, going into every discovery call, doing your best, helping the person figure out, regardless of whether they decide to work with you or not, what their next best step was, and don't be attached to the outcome. And I remember from the get-go being like, logically, I get that, but emotionally, I don't see how you do that, because at the beginning, all you want is a client. You want, not only do you want to be paid, but you want to be helping people. You love doing this job. And so it's like, I just want a client. And how many students have we coached that are just like, I just want a client. I just want a client. And I'm like, absolutely, hallelujah. And also, the minute you attach to like this, it's this again, this way or the highway. Like, if I don't get
Mm-hmm.
a client, then I'm not doing this right. Or if I don't get a client, then I can't be a coach, or whatever it might be, the binary, if this, then that. It's the quickest way to not get a client.
Well, I was also thinking about in that setting, I think about how so many of them are attached to the idea that they're the one getting the result for their client. And
Correct. Oh
they're
my
super
God,
attached to
yes.
that. And I'm
Yep.
like, well, two things. You're not responsible for their outcome. They are. You're
Yep.
responsible for holding the space and showing up in exactly the ways that you promised. Um, and their outcome is up to them. And number two, there's a lot of wonderful things that could come out of that nobody saw coming, right?
Yep.
That needed to happen before they get to that outcome that they'll eventually get to if they still want to.
Yep.
So being attached to, like, you're kind of like trying to speed it along without the journey. And
Yeah.
that's a big piece. When you were saying that, I was just thinking about weight loss too. People are so attached to an outcome of a number on a scale.
Yep.
And
I
obviously
when I
muscle weighs more. So if they're like really taking good care of themselves,
Can
the
I
number
correct you
gets,
really quickly though?
yes, what?
Muscle doesn't weigh more.
It
A
doesn't.
pound's a pound.
Okay, that's true.
But
Maybe what I mean is,
a pound of muscle smaller, so you look
okay,
tinier
I
at the
don't think
same
I
weight.
meant the muscle weighs more, but I think it slows down the number going down.
Well, that's just
right?
it. You can look tinier. You can weigh the same, but you can look tinier because you are more muscular, so you are more lean.
Got it. That's,
Yeah.
I think, what I mean. Like
Sorry.
when people are not like not raised more, but like like when um I have a friend who's a personal trainer, and she's like, people get so frustrated about that number, but they can't
Yep.
see how much stronger they are, how much leaner they are, how much healthier they
Exactly.
are, because they're so focused on that number.
Yeah.
And I think
I,
that's more what I was thinking of.
yeah. No, sorry. It's literally like a tick for me because I had to do that all the time when I was at Weight Watchers. People would say that, well, they'd come in and talk about attached to the outcome. They
Yeah.
would eat well all week, they'd work out a lot, and then they'd come in and they'd stay the same
Yeah.
at the scale. And I'd say, and then they'd go, well, muscle weighs more than fat. I'm like, it doesn't, it doesn't. But what else is happening? Are your clothes fitting better? Are you physically feeling more energy?
Right.
A number at the scale doesn't, I always said this, it's a moment in time on a box of springs. It does not show you the big picture of what's happening in your health and your body
Right.
and your energy. And so
Right.
you're exactly right. It's when you are focused on that number, I really, even as a health coach, like when people would come in, well, I want to lose 25 pounds. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But how about we focus? I mean, that was one of the things I loved about Weight Watchers is they did focus on 5 pound increments because so much could change in 5 pounds.
Yeah.
And if you were always focused on that 25, it was like climbing up a hill. When
Yeah.
5 pounds, your hands could fit better. You could have more energy. You could get up off the ground easier, you
Yeah.
know? So yes,
Yes.
absolutely. That's a big example of being attached to a very specific outcome for sure.
So why do you think it's important, like, for us to even discuss this? Like, why is it important to be unattached outcome in general?
Well, again, I think it's a pretty common human experience, like the idea of this or that. It's we set a goal, right? We want to hit that goal.
Yeah.
And we think it's A to B to C to D to the goal.
Yeah.
And many of you have probably seen some sort of meme about this online around like the trajectory of an entrepreneur. It is not A to B or A to A B C D E. It's A up here and then down there and over here, and it's I think we think and hope that life is linear, and it's
Mm.
not.
It's cyclical. Damn it. I
It's
always say that.
it's cyclical and
Like,
it's
I'm back
all
here
over the
again,
place.
but there's new things to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
And
so,
so you
oh, go
get
ahead.
attached to this outcome, and it's like again, you put blinders on. And when you put blinders on, you miss all the golden, excellent fairy dust that is happening outside of the blinders. And one of those bits of fairy dust, one of those things that you can't see, could actually be the thing that excels you to the outcome faster.
So it's surrendering to the flow of life and trusting
Yes.
again, like we said
Yep.
last week. It's like riding a wave instead of trying to control the ocean.
100%. I love that analogy. I used to use the when I lived in Chicago, and of course you being in SoCal and Brendan being a lifeguard, I'm sure this resonates with you too, but it was every summer, every Memorial Day weekend, there was a news story about, remember, don't go against, I mean, it's not a riptide in a lake, but don't go against the current. If you're seeing a riptide, go with it. It means you end up a mile down the beach, but you get up and
Mm,
walk out. If you fight against that,
it pulls
because
you under.
you're going to get out of this lake, you could get exhausted and drowned,
Yeah.
and so it is about that riding the wave of this, even if it takes you in a part of the beach you weren't expecting to go. And what if you got out of the water and that was like the most beautiful part of the beach you ever saw?
Yes, that is true for the lake, not the ocean. Stay out of the water if there's a riptide. But
Well, no, right. But I'm saying, like, if you're in
yeah,
right, but like
yeah,
in the lakes, you could get in and be everything and be fine, and then all of a sudden, and again,
right.
I guess it's a rip current or whatever,
Yeah,
because it used to happen all the time in Chicago, and people would think, oh crap, and they try to walk out of it, and that's I mean, it's how
yeah.
riptides
No,
work.
I remember going in the water in front of my mom on her towel and coming out somewhere totally different and being like, then realizing we had like gone down. And then very shortly after they like they got everyone out of the
Oh
water
my
'cause they were
gosh, that
starting to
must have
feel
been
people.
scary.
Yeah, it was the undertow, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too, because it's like you're saying, it's dancing with the current. I like it. And when we let go of that attachment of, like I wanted to go there, so I'm just gonna do it, right? Then you open yourself up to, I think it's lovely. You open yourself up to surprises, right?
Well,
I think being so fixated on how I want it to go it doesn't really leave anything interesting or entertaining.
I'm smiling so big because, of course, when I think of Riptides now, I think of us at our retreat in
Oh
Laguna Beach
yeah.
in January.
Yes.
And this is actually a very perfect example of you had this beautiful idea. I was going to stay in the room and get ready, but you, being the SoCal girl that you are, you had this gorgeous idea of people going out. It was January, so it was going to be chilly in the Pacific, but you wanted to do sort of a cleansing. We had done this amazing day on
Well,
Saturday.
just a polar plunge. Yeah,
Well, it's
just
a
a
polar
little like,
plunge, but it
yeah.
was that like little sort of, we had done this gorgeous thing. We
Mhm.
had let go of things on Friday night. We had done all this great work on Saturday. And so Sunday, anybody who wanted to could come out with you and just kind of do a quick cleanse in some ways. Because to me, a polar plunge is a cleanse because it's like, oh my God. And you got out there. I got a text from a participant who had gotten a note, but you already had seen it because you know that there was a riptide.
Oh, we could see it. I could
Oh
see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could see it. And so you pivoted and you guys still enjoyed it. One of our participants sort of rolled around the sand, still got herself wet. I mean,
Well,
it was super fun.
we had two very hardy Midwestern broads out there, and I had to convince them not to go in. I was like, my husband was a lifeguard, and I grew up on these beaches, and this is not something to mess with. And I'm not losing two people from our retreat. Like that's just not going to do it. And they were just so determined to go in at least waist high, and so I was like, okay, let's do that, and then get back out. And I mean, you could feel it. It wanted to pull us under. So
But
yes,
that's
we
my point is
pivoted.
you pivoted really
Pivoted.
quickly and it was still an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Everybody could have been like, well, poop. We didn't get to do what we wanted to do.
Well, here's another example from that weekend. We pictured the beach being Southern California weather because we knew in the winter that's where everyone would want to be. We had a gorgeous setting. We were literally right on the ocean.
Yep.
Right outside bungalows. We had a deck, we had an indoor, we had the sand right there. It worked out for us the first day. We had a gorgeous sunset.
Yep.
And then like that night, we got to go out on the sand. Next day, pouring rain, like
Cold.
pounding, pouring cold rain. The whole beach, like the whole place was closed down except for us there. And had I stayed attached to how it was supposed to look,
Yeah.
I would have been so bummed. And it was so magical. It created this insular, cozy little opportunity for us to just like get around the candles and be together and really hear each other without any ocean
Mhm.
crashing, without a lot of extra people on the beach. Like it
Yeah.
really created something so magical that we would not have enjoyed had we been like, damn it, our whole thing's ruined.
And props and cheers to our participants because they all rolled with it as well, which
Yeah.
is why they were exactly the right women to be there because
Yes.
not a single person was like, well, you said if we came in
Yeah.
January, it was going to be sunny. Side note, I've lived here long enough to be like, I hope it's sunny.
Oh
But
my
that's
gosh.
what I was putting out there.
I almost didn't get out of Portland because of an ice storm.
That's
So yeah.
right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all our Chicago peeps. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, that retreat in some ways was a complete example of not being attached to an outcome. And it was exactly right.
Yeah, totally. I
And the
think
one in Chicago in the fall will be as well.
yes. And who knows what surprises will be thrown our way. I do love it. I think it's such a great opportunity to um like 30-foot view yourself, right? Whether you do
Yeah.
it in the moment or after, like how do I respond creatively? How do I respond versus react? How do I look for the little miracles and surprises in the unexpected? And just how do I free myself? Like I want to have some expectations. I want to have some goals. I want to strive for something, but how do I free myself from how it actually looks and it turns out? Because the striving for it is one thing, the getting there, sure, but you get somewhere. And how is that equally or sometimes even more? How is that sometimes better?
but, and, expectations, we, and probably a lot of our listeners have done some work around not letting go of expectations. Expectations kill joy was one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got when that pod came out, and that was one of your tips around the things we wished we knew, I think was that episode. It's been so long ago. And yet, just because we know better doesn't mean we always do better. So how do you work around those little sneaky buggers?
I think that, obviously there has to be some thought going into, like there has to be some pre-framing for ourselves when we're planning anything, right? If you're planning a party and you didn't like how last time, like you had this image of hosting an event and the whole time you felt like your back was to people getting things ready, right? You can mitigate some of that by being like, I'm just going to do something really easy. I'm going to get the food dropped off, or I will make it, but I'm going to make it ahead of time because my goal is this. I don't know. So I often, for myself, definitely for my kids, and often with certain clients, certain types of clients, depends on their mindset around things, is shift into like not what you want to happen, but how do you want to feel?
Ooh,
And
okay.
I make that your goal. And Danielle Laporte, she kind of has a big following, and she wrote The Fire Starter and other books. But I used to use her planner. I don't know if she still has this, but Desire Mapping is like another book, and it's instead of in your planner like this is the things I want to accomplish. It's like this is my core desired feeling for the year, for the month, for the week, for the day. Like, how do I want to feel? So everything I put on this planner is either in service to it, or if I'm about to put something that really is not in service to it, maybe I should rethink it. Right. So it's shifting from do to be. Right. And so I think that helps, being unattached to outcomes, because if how I want to feel when people come over is connected, then I will be okay if something burns, or the entertainment doesn't show up, or I don't know, like like something like the internet's blown, I can't play music, whatever. That would bum me out actually. But if I really want this experience to just feel connected, then I'm going to be able to respond with a little bit more humor and creativity. If I have like this, everything needs to go perfectly, or even not everything has to go perfectly, but I hope everyone has fun. Like I can't control that. I can't control any of that. But if what I want to feel is present, there's some things I can do ahead of time to kind of help that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, and thinking about my example of being unattached to getting a client, I would say to students, one of the great things, especially the way we taught our students, one of the ways we taught our students to do discovery calls was when they got done with that call, no matter what the outcome was, they were going to feel good that they just helped someone. Again, it might not be working with them, but somehow their potential client was going to get off that call with an action step, and they would feel good getting off that call. And again, it took me a couple of years, really. I mean, easily a couple of years to be able to completely embrace that for myself. But now, whenever I have a discovery call, I kind of just say out loud to myself beforehand, like, if this client's meant for me, they'll sign. And if they aren't, they won't. And neither here, so be it, and because of that, they almost always do, because I'm there is the energetics around that too, right? Like, think about your party, right? If you were so attached to the way it had to go, your energy that you would be giving off would not only be not present, but just wouldn't be joyful or fun to be around.
I have a hideous example of that, of
Oh no.
somebody come, not myself. I'm sure I could come up with examples of myself. I'm not saying I'm above that, but I could just think about a woman's weekend where someone was so focused on exactly how things needed to be. She was really treating people badly and kind of losing it. And it really, like, in the end, I think everyone else had fun despite that. But like, I felt bad for her, and I think it caused a lot of the opposite of what she was hoping for.
Yeah.
That was hard to watch. And it was hard to, like, because you can only support that so much and bring compassion to it so much when they're so like, oh, this sucks because it wasn't this. And you're like, oh, you do you, I'm gonna go walk on the beach. But yeah, like that just struck me as I was just thinking too, in like, previous work I was doing in education, in a youth program in Nashville. I had this idea that everyone in this program where I was teaching, they all had to graduate and get their diploma or GED. Like that was what I was hired to do. And not everyone did. And yet to this day, and this is like, I've been in Portland 25 years. So like 27 years ago, to this day, sometimes they or their family members reach out to me about like just the impact that experience they had with these other kids in this classroom, like was the turning point for them. And, they
Wow.
went on to some job training or they got it later. Right. And I think at the time I was pretty young, I was like, maybe almost 30. I don't know. That was really young. That was a long time ago, right? Yeah, it's late 20s. I think at the time it was like success or failure. This goes back
Yeah.
to that binary thing, right? And they're like, oh, it's like there's no success and there's no failure. There is an experience that's stretching everyone. And it's awesome to be humbled and remember that everyone has the capacity to grow in whatever ways they need to. And that taught me a lot, like that I was not only, ruining the experience for myself, I was like really, I don't know, like diminishing what they
I
were,
was gonna say limiting their
like diminishing,
ability.
diminishing like what that looked like for them when I
Yeah.
was feeling that way. I wasn't saying that to them, but I remember just like, oh, that's not a failure. That is exactly what needs to happen is everyone's growing in the ways that they're meant to grow. And that taught me a lot.
Did you get any pushback from the place you were working for?
Um, I got pushback from a couple parents at the
Mm.
time.
Oh,
And
interesting. Well, how did you handle that?
but they weren't as much, blaming me. They were blaming their kid.
Mm.
And that part was sad and hard. But
Yeah.
I I handled that by advocating, but I will tell you that in my mind I was like, oh, I should have, did it, like what, and that, again, that was totally not looking at what they were accomplishing. And you and I were having a conversation earlier about Griffin in this way. Like
Yeah.
Griffin's brain is brilliant. It is
Yeah.
not the traditional type of learning. So school settings are going to make him feel like a failure or going to make him look like a failure. The traditional ways of learning. The K through 8 school I sent him to was brilliant that way. They were big believers in Melvins, all kinds of minds. And the way they taught was, we're going to do all kinds of ways so that every single kid not only experiences some mastery, but every other kid is experiencing that kid having some mastery. There's
That's
different
cool.
ways of coming to things. And you know, we go through this a lot. Like what you think might be a failure, like to him is a massive success
Yeah.
because last year he couldn't even walk with someone, not holding on to him. And so, what might look like, oh, poor him, like the amount of pity or just discomfort people get when they don't see him hitting the same marks as his peers, it's like, it's sad for them. He is not experiencing that. And
Yeah.
there's also the memory that, like, the reminder that he can sometimes, especially post seizure and on these meds, he can look and appear weak, and kind of low energy and fragile, but like he's a badass. You saw him, like he
I
is
did.
pushing through so much with all this energy. You saw him playing basketball, and thank God for things like Special Olympic sports and unified sports, because it's not just him, it's all those kids. Like somebody's holding them capable. And this isn't like some of those kids, as you know, I was telling them they wanted to play high school sports, but because of medical or, disability stuff, they couldn't. But here they are playing sports. So maybe it's not the outcome
Right.
that someone wanted for their kid or they wanted for themselves, but look, it's happening.
Well,
And it's
it
even
is the
that,
outcome. It's just not
right.
happening the way they thought. I mean, that's a
And
perfect example of that.
it's so much richer, as you saw, because like
Yes.
everyone on all sides of that, are just so happy because we understand the weight of these accomplishments. We understand how big a moment this is for each of these kids. That's a better outcome.
100%. I mean, my whole trip to see you was amazing and everything single thing we did was phenomenal, but I would be hard pressed to not remember that basketball game because I miss I miss high school sports. I didn't realize how much I missed it, but since my kids go to performing arts school, we don't have that. And I miss basketball. Um, but more than that, that was a ginormous joy-filled room.
Mm.
From I mean, from tip to toe. It was just
Mm.
unbelievable. I think I smiled from the minute I walked in. I mean, I got to walk Griff up to get the team photo, like from,
Oh,
and
yes.
and the kid that like pulled him over and made sure he grabbed him and got him in the picture, like every single bit of that. And there was a time, as I'm sure you well know,
Mhm.
that didn't exist.
No.
It was the binary, which is
Yeah.
again why this is such a nice wave into last week. It was like you are either abled, and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching YouTube, or you're not, and that's just bullshit.
Mhm.
And if we still believed that way, if there were not educators who understood that getting to the outcome comes in a whole range of colors, where would so many of these kids be?
Right.
And
Oh,
and
for sure.
adults, and I mean everybody,
And everyone benefits. I mean, I think
hundred
the whole
percent.
community benefits so much from integration and
Yep.
inclusion, in ways they just don't. I mean, I think, I mean, I know you've said it, you see it in my boys, you see it in your kids, like
Mhm.
if, you know, anything Liam struggled with has benefited their relationship, but also just Charlotte is just even that much more empathetic
Right.
than she already
Yes.
was, right? So, and vice versa,
And
right?
vice
With your
versa,
kids,
for sure. Yeah.
same with my kids. I think they are just so much more programmed to look at who might not be included.
Yeah.
Not to say they don't have other things, but I'm not saying they're out there being saints. They're human, but they definitely have an extra ability to normalize, you know, other experiences that are happening for people. And I think that comes like that's an example of how we benefit from this. Isn't exactly what people were picturing, but being unattached to that is allowing us to celebrate this and not constantly be like, well, it isn't that,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. And I think you said it a little bit ago, but that idea of shoulds, right? Then you get into that whole um uh I want to say like morass of
Mm-hmm.
shoulds. Well, if I had done this, then it would have been that. Not necessarily. Again, if you're making grand pronouncements, they're almost always not true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never that clear cut. Um, but I also, as you were talking about being a youngin at 30, um, I'm, we've said this before, but we realize now that, this is not a pod just for women of a certain age. So for those of our younger listeners who are in their 20s, 30s, early 30s, and haven't, and are like me when I started coaching and thought, okay, logically, I understand this, but I can't make this, I don't know how to make this happen emotionally. What would you say to those young people who would like to get there faster than 45, which is essentially 47 when I got there?
And when you say get there,
To
just so,
understand,
oh,
to be able
yeah,
to let go. I mean, part of it
right.
was being present, right? That was a tip for you, is trying to reframe.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what else?
but when you're so focused on outcome, you might be missing what is. So it's being focused on outcome takes you out of presence. It does get
Okay.
into that thing like that can be anxiety, right?
Yep.
Which is focusing too much, worrying about the future that you can't have any control over. Takes you
Yep.
out of presence. But I think what it comes down to is like understanding like the pros and cons of both quality and quantity.
Mm.
When we're really attached to one, we forget the benefits of the other. And it goes both ways. I think we've always thought quality over quantity, but as parents, you cannot dictate the quality of a moment. You might think so. You
Right.
took the day off and we're going to have this great thing. And guess what? That middle schooler's window is up and shut. And like, they're just going to be like this. Can I go on my phone? And you're like, damn it, I took the day off.
Yeah.
I get it. I sympathize, bitch about it to your friends. We get it.
Have a
So
thread like you and I
right.
do.
Like, yes, yes, but have a quantity of times like that so that you catch them. So
Yeah.
whether you can be around more or you plan those more without any attachment, because I promise you, even if they're like this the whole time, like, and I'm, obviously kind of scrunched up, folding my arms, that does fill that bucket. Those
Yeah.
that time together, even if they're being little jerks, does add up. So you got to like bring in the quality. Same thing, like when you're going for a certain number of things, like they all graduate. Don't miss the quality of what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think it's just integrating the positives of both, because again, like I would think about, I think about somebody who like plans things because she wants it to be so special and memorable, like a friend in my life. And then she gets really bummed that people were on their phones. And I was like, okay, you can't control that, right? You could pre-frame some of it, and some people are bold enough to do that, and everyone's grateful. And Peter
Mhm.
always says, I wish like he actually on a college application, they said, what's something you would invent? He's like like some sort of button that would make everyone's phones turn off so that they would like actually look at each other, right?
Mm.
Young people actually long for that, but then
Yeah.
they're just on them because everyone else is, right?
Yep.
Um, so, I said, you could preframe that. You could. And you could also think about like what's important for you and choose wisely who you invite to those things, or, make your wishes known and then let what happens happens.
Hmm.
I just, I don't, I think you're going to keep getting disappointed if you keep inviting the same people, but not like being really clear about what your intention is. So I think maybe being clear about intentions and, notice if you're focused too much on quality and not like doing it consistently enough to maybe get there, or you're focused too much on the the numerical outcome, and you're missing being present. So I think those are my tips. What would be
Yeah.
your?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an aspect, sort of piggyback off some of the things you're saying. There might be something around appreciation. So appreciating what does go well versus focusing on what didn't go well.
Mm,
And I really like the word appreciation over gratitude. I was reminded of this again recently. I read it a long time ago, but there is a different energy around gratitude and appreciation. Gratitude feels a little bit like you're still struggling through something. You're so grateful to get through it. Whereas appreciation is just allowing what has happened to be true. Um, and so then also not always assuming the worst because things didn't go well the last time. I guess that idea of what I said last week so many times, which is assuming everything is working out. What if
mhm,
everything works out for me? That was actually just the card I pulled today. What if everything is always working out for me?
mm,
And so there's appreciation, and in that there's presence, but at the end of the day, you and I were having this conversation again off mic or off camera, off pod about, realizing right now Charlotte's go has a lot on her plate. And I also feel the ticking time of her leaving for college, luckily, essentially just down the road. So it's not like she's going to be far away, but um, I am balancing the quantity of time I have left with her with the quality of time I'm getting, because she's like one thing going wrong away from from just losing it, and rightfully so. And so it's up to me to end the day and think, well, we had this moment and that's good, and we had that moment, and in the grand scheme of things, she's not going to remember how she snapped at me for A, she's going to remember how I responded to B. So
mm.
the appreciation aspect of it, I think, it's I guess it's not letting go of outcomes in the moment, but it's recognizing after the fact where the outcome wasn't what you expected and it was still great.
Right. And these aren't the outcome. These are little moments.
Right.
And yeah, that's always a really good reminder. I just, when you were just saying that, I was picturing that emoji that looks like this.
Oh, I use that emoji
Yeah,
a lot.
like, okay, we're just gonna ride through this. Like I definitely
That
went
is
through
called the
that.
grimace emoji. I don't know if you've ever heard it
I
read to
didn't
you
know
through
that.
series. That is actually called the grimace emoji. I use that emoji a lot. A
I think
lot.
of it as the I'm fine, everything's fine emoji,
Also
but
that,
yeah.
yeah. I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. I learned to ride the waves with my kids around that stuff. It's like, okay, okay, this is not fun. Whereas, I just think reacting to it gets me nowhere.
And I can also feel sad about it. I can feel sad
Totally.
that so this again is not about bypassing disappointment or frustration, but it's not letting it consume you.
Oh, quite the opposite. I agree with you. I think that's such an important thing you brought up. In the case of, Griffin, I can grieve that he made it through high school and didn't go to any dances. Like but so, like I can grieve that, and allowing myself to grieve it totally makes more room for me to celebrate what is happening for him now.
Yeah.
I can grieve that so much of it like was lost to him. And I do every once in a while do that. And it helps. I'll never forget a friend of mine whose son has a different disability. We went walking and I said, and her husband had a stroke. And I said, you seem, I don't know what it's like in your house. No one ever knows what it's like in anyone's house, but you seem like you're balancing like work and all this caregiving. And she goes, oh, it's just because like maybe once a week I let myself have a pity party and it really helps. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm afraid of that. I might drown in that certain years that we've had, with Griffin being in the hospital and stuff. But she's right. Like, I don't know. Have you seen Shrinking?
I have only watched the first episode. I want to watch more of it, but I've
Okay,
only watched
so
one.
this may be in the first episode, but the Harrison Ford's character, the older therapist who has Parkinson's, I believe.
No, I haven't gotten there yet.
Every day, I don't know if it's like 1 minute, 5 minutes. I think he said 10 minutes, but I can't remember. He puts on sad music and cries, and that helps him every day. And
well, it's Holly Hunter and Broadcast News. That's my
right.
I love it. Every day she takes the phone up. Oh, she has to, in old school for our young listeners, she had to take the phone off the hook. She unplugs it from the wall, and then she cries for 5 minutes.
Yep, it
like balls. Times it. It's so great.
Well, he's not giving that a nod. I forgot about that. You're right. And I just think the point is like being unattached doesn't mean there aren't feelings with that.
Yes.
It's just quite possibly allowing you to be way more in touch with everything that's going on when you're like, it might not go the way I want, and I can feel however I want. And now I have this space to like see how it did go and enjoy that. Right. And celebrate when it does.
Yeah, totally. And makes that, and in some ways those celebrations, and don't bypass those celebrations either because you think the other shoe's gonna fall, right? Like that's so I this whole time I keep thinking the Serenity Prayer, and it's such a great, I can never say it off the top of my head, so I'm not even going to try, but I think everybody knows it. And if you don't, I will put it on social media. But
just the serenity to accept the things I can't control. Yeah.
Accept the things I cannot change, or change the things I can, and know the difference between the two, something along those lines. And in that surrender, it can be scary, and that's okay. That's okay. This none, quite frankly, there's not a, I would say, I shouldn't make a blanket statement, but I feel like there's nothing we've talked about for the most part on this pod that is easy. We aren't here to celebrate easy. We're here to celebrate real. Yeah, we're giving realness, as they say.
Can I share real quick a poem by someone named Rita Anna Thompson about this? I just remembered that, and I think it's beautiful. Letting go, it kind of combines last week and this week. Letting go of expectations means removing all limitations with pure intent. Resting in the knowing that all of my needs and desires manifest in divine timing. Letting go of expectations is also stepping into a higher consciousness. Feeling the love of spirit leads me into a state of blissfulness. My gratitude for all things opens the portals for more abundance and love to come in. My soul rejoices in that energy, and that is so comforting and fulfilling.
Wow. That is amazing. Yeah. And so it shall be.
Yes. Do we have a song?
We do. Okay. Again, this one is a little hard this week to figure this one out. It may not seem like it's exactly but the more I think about it, the more I love it. And it's my favorite Beach Boys album. It's my Soft Pet Sounds. It's my favorite Beach Boys song. Bowie did. I don't often say it's not as good, but Brian Wilson's version of this is definitely superior to Bowie's.
It's pretty magical. It's pretty
Bowie. Yeah, it is magical. And it's funny because I remember, I don't know if it was in the most recent movie, or I think it was in the most recent movie, which I'm losing, Love and Mercy, where he's Paul Dano as young Brian Wilson is singing this for the dad, and the dad's like, that doesn't make any sense. How can it be both things? And so it's God only knows.
Yes.
I could read the entire thing, but I'm actually just going to start at the beginning because this shows you not being let. This is the way I read it online. It's like it's the dichotomy of a breakup and it being painful, but also realizing it is what it is. And I think that's a perfect example of not being attached to the outcome. So I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me, well, life would go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me. So what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. So he is both understanding that he can't be without her, and if he is, he is. And that to me is a beautiful, gorgeous love song about letting go of the outcomes.
I love that.
I know, love that song, and God bless Brian Wilson. I know he's going through it right now, but he has brought a lot of joy and beautiful, beautiful art to this world, and absolutely neurodivergent. And thank God, because he is just an amazing, amazing artist that we have been. Well, like the quote goes, we were of all the years to live in the world, we were lucky enough to live while Bowie was living. I think the same of Brian Wilson. We were lucky enough to be on this earth the same time as Brian Wilson because I just love him.
I have an embarrassing confession about the Beach Boys. I thought that it was just like California music that like, local, right? Like I thought growing up in California, Southern California, that we were aware of them more than other people would be.
Sure.
Not because we were special, but I just didn't know how, like I knew the Beatles were. I knew I knew all that, but I didn't realize until I was an adult that like what a musical genius he was and how critically acclaimed he was by his peers.
Yeah.
Eventually more so by, music critics, but like, John Lennon and Bowie, people were really, really seeing, the genius in that. He sounded frustrating as hell to work with because back then people just didn't have any sense of neurodivergence. Right. So to have an entire orchestra in there waiting and then have him go, nope. That sounds difficult. That's his genius kind of Mozart stuff, right? But it's
because they were attached to the outcome of how records should be made.
Exactly. It's great bringing it back. But anyways, that was my embarrassing admission that I was like, I guess he was brilliant.
And it's so funny because the Beach Boys were my dad's favorite, and Help Me Rhonda was his favorite song. And I may have shared this story in the past, and this has nothing to do with the episode, but I'm going to say it anyways. We went soon after he died. My son Liam was in a Habit, which is just a burger place out here. Maybe they're everywhere, I don't know. And normally they're just playing normal, regular, current music. Out of the blue, they played Help Me Rhonda, and then went back to regular music. And Liam immediately was like, Grandpa was here. It was so cute. And so they've always held a special place in my heart. And then they were really one of Liam's first favorite bands too. So again, Brian Wilson has a little Brian Wilson place in my heart, shape in my heart.
I love the music from last week and this week, and I got to start following it. Following the playlist. I get into like my ruts. Like I follow our last year playlist all the time, which is so excellent. So if you're not listening to much on, or if you're looking for something to follow on Spotify, our playlists are so fun and eclectic, and they're just they're these great curated lists from all of our episodes, and sometimes they're music that guests bring to us. So it really
which is super fun.
So tapestry. I love it.
100% a tapestry. So yes, there is the Things We Know playlist. It's Kari and I's picture photograph, not the drawing. And then there is season 2 as well with a different photo, and it grows with each week because we do add each song that we quote or that our guest quotes. So we've gone from Sweet Child of Mine to God Only Knows. We have them all on there.
It's awesome.
They're amazing.
These are all songs I love.
I know, it's so good.
Season 2 might be my favorite.
Yeah. So to end, we just asked you to follow the playlist, but more importantly, as you are listening, wherever you are right now, if you are not already following us, go and hit the follow button. And if you are on Spotify, give us stars. And if you are on Apple, leave us a review. We love reading those. Sometimes we can tell who it is, sometimes we can't. but it's so fun that is often how we get the feedback from you guys. Yes, you could email us. Yes, you could say things on our social media posts, but it's a direct reflection back to us of what is important to you guys and what this podcast means to you. So right now, as soon as you get done listening, go give us a review or stars on Spotify and Apple.
And thank you so much for that and for listening. Yay.
And we will be back next week. Thanks, everyone.
So long.